The night he became world champion, Andy Fordham could barely see the board. 4,500 people in the room, millions more watching at home, and the biggest man in darts was standing at the oche, drunk, hitting the greatest average anyone had ever produced in a world final. He would call that night the best of his life. He would also call it the worst thing that ever happened to him. Both things were true, and within 18 years, it would help put him in an early grave. This is what happened to the Viking. Before the beard, before the long hair, before the nickname that stuck to him forever, there was a skinny kid from southeast London they called the Whippet. Andy Fordham was born on the 2nd of February 1962. The record on exactly where is a little murky. Some accounts say Bristol. Most place him in Charlton, in the southeast of the capital, and that is where he grew up, the eldest of 4 children. He went to Charlton Manor Primary and then Eaglesfield Secondary, and back then, nobody would have looked at him and thought darts. He was fast, he was slim, he played football and he ran track, and he was quick enough that the whole school knew him as the Whippet. Darts came to him almost by accident. He was playing football for a pub team, the Angerstein Hotel in Greenwich, the same men who kicked a ball on the weekend threw arrows in the week, and one night the darts side was a man short. They handed him 3 darts. That was the beginning. He worked in the trades in those early years, and later he found a life that fit him best of all. Andy Fordham became a publican. Now, a lot of people think he ran a pub in Thornton Heath. He did not. Andy and his wife Jenny ran the Rose in Overy Street in Dartford, Kent. They ran the Queen's Arms in Woolwich too, and later the Cutty Sark in Thamesmead. Behind the bar, pint in hand, telling stories, roaring with laughter. That was where he belonged, and that in the end was part of the problem. By the mid-90s, the Whippet was long gone. In his place stood something the sport had never quite seen before. Andy Fordham had grown. The long hair, the thick beard, the sheer size of the man filled the stage. Somebody called him the Viking, and it fit so perfectly that nobody ever called him anything else again. He walked out to write said Fred's "I'm Too Sexy," which was funny, and he knew it was funny, and the crowd loved him for playing along. But here is the thing, people forget about Andy Fordham. Underneath the showmanship, the man could throw. He rolled up to the Lakeside World Championship year after year, 12 years straight, and he became known as the Great Nearly Man of the BDO. He reached the semi-finals in 1995 and lost. Semi-finals in 1996 and lost. Semi-finals in 1999 and lost. Semi-finals in 2001 and lost again. 4 times he got within touching distance of the biggest prize in his world, and 4 times he was sent home. He did break through for one major. In 1999, he won the Win Mal World Masters, beating Wayne Jones in the final. A real title at last. But the big one, the world crown, kept slipping through those enormous hands. Then came 2004, and for a few glorious weeks, everything Andy Fordham had ever wanted arrived at once. The run started quietly. He beat Brian Derbyshire 3-0. He beat Tony West 3-0 and very nearly threw a 9-darter doing it. In the quarter-final, he edged Daryl Fitton 5-4, the kind of tight finish that leaves you shaking. And then came the semi-final that made him a legend. Standing across from him was Raymond van Barneveld, the defending champion, the favourite, one of the greatest players ever to pick up a dart, and early on, it was going exactly the way everyone expected. Fordham went 0-3 down. He clawed back and then went 2-4 down. It was slipping away. The fairy tale was ending before it began. Except it did not end. Andy Fordham dug in and dragged himself back into that match set by set, and he beat Barneveld 5-4. To this day, people who were in the room talk about that match as one of the greatest Lakeside has ever hosted. That put him in the final against Mervyn King. Fordham went 2 sets down again. Of course he did. And once again, he refused to fold. He hit a 139 checkout to take the 8th set. He recovered from 2-0 down in the 9th, and when it was done, Andy Fordham had won the BDO World Championship, 6 sets to 3. Look at the numbers, because they tell you how good he really was that night. His 3-dart average in that final was 97.18, the highest average produced in a world final since the sport split into 2 codes back in 1993. This was not a novelty act who got lucky. This was, for one night, the best darts player on the planet. But there is a detail behind that number that changes everything. Andy Fordham had been drinking since that morning. He later admitted, plainly, that he was drunk during the biggest win of his career. Reports from that night say he got through a bottle of brandy and something like 24 bottles of beer before he stepped up to throw. And he still averaged 97 in a world final. Sit with that for a second, because it is astonishing and it is heartbreaking, and both of those feelings are pointing at the exact same thing. Winning changed his life. It did not make it better. He said it himself, years later. Becoming world champion was one of the worst things that ever happened to him. He was not built for the spotlight. He was shy underneath all the noise, and he said that when the attention came, he drank to cover it. Now he was a champion. Everywhere he went, people wanted to buy the Viking a drink, and the Viking said yes. That November, in 2004, they put him in a match that should have been a celebration, the showdown. Andy Fordham, the BDO World Champion, against Phil Taylor, the PDC World Champion. Best of 13 sets at the Circus Tavern in Purfleet, live on Sky. The two kings of a divided sport, finally in the same room. It was a disaster. Under the hot television lights, Fordham started to come apart. He was sweating. He was struggling to breathe. Set by set, the biggest man in darts was visibly fading in front of the cameras. At the end of the 7th set, he asked to stop, and he did not come back. The medical staff told him he could not continue. Phil Taylor was leading 5 sets to 2 and was declared the winner. At the time, most people assumed it was an asthma attack. Andy let them think it, but he knew the truth, and later he told it. He had been drinking from the morning again. There were beers and brandies lined up at the bar waiting for him. The collapse everyone blamed on the heat, on his breathing, on the lights, was the sound of his body starting to give up. That scare sent him to a doctor, and the doctor gave him a sentence he could not laugh off. The verdict was brutal. Andy Fordham was told his liver was 75% dead. The quarter that was left was not in good shape either. He was diagnosed with cirrhosis, and he was told, in the plainest possible terms, that if he did not stop drinking immediately, it would kill him. To understand how he got there, you have to understand the scale of it. At his heaviest, Andy Fordham weighed a reported 31 stone. That is around 200 kilograms. He wore a 56-inch waist, and the drinking, by his own accounts, was enormous. He talked about getting through at least a crate of beer, a couple of bottles of wine, and spirits on top, every single day. Other times, he described up to 25 bottles of lager and half a bottle of spirits as an ordinary day. He said himself it was hard to even count. He tried to fight it. He went on Celebrity Fit Club and became genuinely popular on the show, and he lost weight. But then he would go back behind the bar, back into the world where everyone wanted to toast the champion, and the weight and the drinking would creep back in. Then came January 2007. At the Lakeside World Championship, the tournament that made him, Andy Fordham collapsed with chest pains just before his first round match. He never threw a dart. His opponent, Simon Whitlock, went through without playing. Fordham had a huge volume of fluid drained from his body and spent 3 weeks in hospital. Shortly after he got out, he suffered a minor stroke, and in 2008, he was placed on the liver transplant list. He said his last drink was on the 8th of January 2007. The Viking finally stopped, but the damage was already deep, and it was permanent. What came next was years of a man trying to claw his life back. He lost an incredible amount of weight, as much as 15 or 16 stone at his best, and at one point he came off the emergency transplant list. But it never held. The weight would return, back up over 20 stone. He wanted a gastric band and was told he could not have one, so it was down to him, his own willpower, over and over, winning and losing the same battle. And in the middle of all that, he gave the fans one last gift. In October 2015, Andy Fordham qualified for the PDC Grand Slam of Darts. He walked out in Wolverhampton and beat Wayne Jones 5-3. It was his first televised win in a decade. The whole arena was chanting his name. A room full of people, on their feet, roaring for a man who had come back from being told he was dying. If you only ever watch one clip of Andy Fordham make it that walk-on, that is who he was to darts fans, right there. His last competitive tournament came in March 2018. The body simply could not do it anymore. Then things got worse. In 2020, he needed a life-saving bowel operation. In January 2021, he was diagnosed with COVID-19. He was remarkably still trying to prepare for a comeback at the first World Seniors Championship. The Viking never really stopped wanting to compete. On the 15th of July 2021, Andy Fordham died in hospital in Dartford, Kent. His wife Jenny was by his side. He was 59 years old. The cause was major organ failure, the endpoint of a long battle that had started in the beer cellars and the bars and the bright lights years before. His body, after everything it had carried and everything it had lost, finally gave out. Jenny posted a message from his account. She wrote that Andy was, is, and always would be her champion. The tributes came from every corner of a sport that had spent years divided into two camps but agreed completely on this one man. Barry Hearn called him one of the most recognizable and popular players in the world and said his 2004 win would always be remembered as the greatest moment of his career and that he was a lovely man. Bobby George called him a gentle giant, loved by all. Mervyn King, the man he beat in that final, said Andy always made him laugh, that he simply loved the sport. Frank Bruno called him a lovely man and one of the game's great characters. Player after player, from Adrian Lewis to James Wade to John Lowe, said the same thing in different words, a true friend to everyone. His funeral was held on the 6th of August, 2021. People lined the streets. Among the tributes was a Viking helmet with a single word on it, legend, and a giant dartboard covered in messages from the people who loved him. Here is the thing about Andy Fordham. The world remembers a cautionary tale, and it is one. The drinking took his health, his money, and in the end his life, and he was honest enough to say so out loud when a lot of men would have hidden it. But that is not all he was. He was the shy kid called the Whippet, who became the giant called the Viking. He was the nearly man who finally, on one impossible night, was the best in the world. He was the publican who never met a stranger, the man who paraded his trophy at both Millwall and Rangers because he loved his teams as much as he loved the crowd. They called him the People's Champion, and they meant it. Windmills still sell his darts. The message on them reads, "Gone but never forgotten." He was a big man who cast an even bigger shadow over his sport, and darts has not produced anyone quite like him since. Andy Fordham, the Viking, 1962 to 2021. Rest easy, big man. If you remember watching Andy throw, tell us in the comments where you were the night he beat Barneveld. And if you want more stories like this from the world of darts, you know what to do.